Good morning, boys and girls. I hope you enjoyed the next chapter in our chapter book, Trumpet of the Swan. In this chapter, Lewis is actually going to be checking into the Ritz Hotel for the night. Please enjoy it. When the desk clerk at the Ritz Hotel saw the boatman enter the lobby, followed by an enormous snow-white swan with a black beak, the clerk didn't like it at all. The clerk was a carefully dressed man, very neat, his hair nicely combed. The boatman stepped boldly up to the desk. "I'd like a single room for tonight for my friend here," said the boatman. The clerk shook his head. "No birds," he said. "The Ritz doesn't take birds." "You take celebrities, don't you?" asked the boatman. "Certainly," replied the clerk. "You'd take Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor, wouldn't you, if they wanted to spend the night?" "Of course," replied the clerk. "You'd take Queen Elizabeth, wouldn't you?" "Of course," said the clerk. "Okay," said the boatman. "My friend here is a celebrity. He is a famous musician. He created a sensation in the public garden this afternoon. You must have heard the commotion. He's a trumpeter swan and plays like the great Louis Armstrong." The clerk gazed suspiciously at Lewis. "Has he any luggage?" asked the clerk. "Luggage!" cried the boatman. "Take a look at him. Look at the stuff he's got with him." "Well, I don't know," said the clerk, staring at Lewis's possessions. His trumpet, his money bag, his slate, his chalk pencil, his life-saving medal. "A bird is a bird. How do I know he hasn't got any?" "Birds often have other things, though, with them." "Does he have any lice?" "Birds often have lice." "The Ritz won't take anybody that has lice." "Lice!" said the boatman. "Did you ever see a cleaner guest in your whole life? Look at him. He's immaculate." At this, Lewis held his slate up to the clerk. "No lice," he wrote down. The clerk stared in amazement. He was beginning to weaken. "Well, I have to be careful," he said to the boatman. "You say he's a celebrity? How do I know he's famous? You may just be kidding me about that." Just then, 3 young girls entered the lobby. They were giggling and squealing, and one of them pointed at Lewis. "There he is! There he is!" she screamed. "There he is! I'll get his autograph." The girls rushed up to Lewis. The first girl held out a pad and pencil. "May I have your autograph?" she asked. Lewis took the pencil. Very gracefully, he wrote "Lewis" on the pad. More squeals, more giggles, and the girls rushed away, and the clerk watched in silence. "There," said the boatman. "Is he a celebrity or isn't he?" The clerk hesitated. He was beginning to think he would have to give Lewis a room. At this point, Lewis had an idea. He lifted his trumpet and began to play. His tone was beautiful. Guests passing through the lobby paused and stopped to listen. The clerk leaned his elbows on the desk and listened as well. The man behind the newsstand looked up and listened. People sitting upstairs in the lounge put down their drinks and listened. The bellboy stared and listened, and for a few minutes, everything stopped in the lobby while Lewis played. He charmed everyone who could hear him. Chambermaids in the bedrooms paused in their work to listen. It was a moment of sheer magic. As the song came to an end, people who knew the words sang softly. "How about that?" asked the boatman, grinning at the clerk. "Is this swan a musician or isn't he?" "Oh, he plays a sweet trumpet," the clerk said. "But there is one more question that I hesitate to bring up. What about his personal habits? Will he mess the room up at all? Actors are bad enough. Musicians are worse. I can't allow a large bird to occupy one of our beds. It might put us out of business. Other guests might complain." "I sleep in the bathtub," Lewis wrote on his slate. "Will not use the bed." The clerk shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "Who's going to pay the bill?" he asked. "I am," replied the boatman. "I'll be here early tomorrow morning when Lewis checks out." The clerk couldn't think of any more reasons for not letting Lewis stay in a room. "Very well," he said. "Sign the register, please." He handed Lewis a pen and a card, and Lewis wrote "Lewis the Swan, Upper Red Rock Lake, Montana." The clerk studied it. He seemed satisfied at last. He summoned a bellboy and handed him a key. "Take this gentleman to his room," he said. Lewis removed his medal, his trumpet, his slate, his chalk pencil, and his money bag, and headed with the bellboy. Together they walked to the elevators, and the boatman said goodbye. "Sleep well," Lewis called the boatman, "and be ready to come to work tomorrow morning." Lewis nodded. The elevator door opened. "This way, sir," said the bellboy. They entered the elevator and waited for the doors to close. A rich smell of perfume filled the air. Louis stood very still. Then he felt himself rising. The elevator stopped at the 7th floor, and the bellboy led Louis to a room, unlocked the door, and ushered him in. "Here you are, sir," he said. "Would you like a window open?" The bellboy put Louis's things down, snapped a few lights, opened a window, and laid the room key on the dresser. Then he waited. "Oh, I guess he wants a tip," thought Louis. So he went to his money bag, loosened the drawstring, and took out $1. "Thank you very much, sir," said the bellboy, taking the $1, and he went out and closed the door softly behind him. Louis was alone at last, alone in a room at the Ritz. Louis had never spent a night alone in the hotel. First, he walked around and around, switching the lights on and off and examining everything. On the writing desk, he found a few sheets of letter paper that said Ritz-Carlton, Boston. He felt mussy and dirty, so he went into the bathroom, climbed into the tub, pulled the shower curtain across, and took a shower bath. It felt good and reminded him of the water fights he used to have with his brothers and sisters. He was careful not to splash any water out of the tub. When he was finished, he stood for a while admiring the bath mat and preening his feathers. Then he felt really hungry. On the wall of the bedroom, he found a button that said waiter. Louis put his beak against the button and pressed hard, and in a few minutes there was a knock at the door, and a waiter came. He was nicely dressed and tried not to show surprise at finding a Swan when he opened the door. "May I get you something?" the waiter asked. Louis picked up his chalk pencil. 12 watercress sandwiches, please," he wrote on a slate. The waiter thought for a moment. "Are you expecting guests?" he asked. Louis shook his head. "And you want 12 watercress sandwiches?" Louis nodded. Very well, sir," said the waiter. "Do you wish them with mayonnaise?" Louis didn't know what mayonnaise tasted like, but he thought fast. He cleaned his slate and wrote 1 with, 11 without. The waiter bowed and left the room. Half an hour later, he was back. He rolled a table into the room, placed a huge platter of watercress sandwiches on it, along with a plate, a knife, a fork, a spoon, salt, pepper, a glass of water, a linen napkin nicely folded. There was also a butter dish with several pieces of butter covered with cracked ice. The waiter arranged everything carefully, then handed Louis a bill to sign. The bill said, 12 watercress sandwiches, $18. So watercress is a type of lettuce, just to let you know. Goodness, thought Louis, this is an expensive place. I hope the boatman won't be mad when he sees this supper charge to the bill tomorrow morning. He borrowed a pencil from the waiter and signed the bill, Louis the Swan. The waiter took the bill and stood there waiting. I guess he wants a tip, thought Louis. So he opened his money bag again, drew out $2 and handed it to the waiter, who thanked him, bowed, and went away. Because the Swan has such a long neck, the table was just the right height for Louis. He didn't need a chair. He ate his supper standing up. He tried the sandwich that had mayonnaise on it and decided, he really didn't like mayonnaise. Then he carefully pulled each sandwich apart. All he really wanted was the watercress. He piled the slices of bread in 2 neat piles, scooped the watercress onto his plate, and had a nice supper. He did not touch the butter. When he was thirsty, instead of drinking from the glass of water, he walked into the bathroom, drew a basin full of cold water, and drank that. Then he took his napkin, wiped his beak, and pushed the table out of the way. And he felt much better. To be all alone in a hotel room gives a person a cozy feeling and a feeling of importance. Louis felt great, but soon he began to feel rather lonely. He thought of Sam Beaver, he thought of Camp Kookooskoos, he thought of his father and mother and sisters and brothers back in Montana. He thought about Serena, the Swan he loved, and wondered how she was. The words of the song he had played in the lobby came back to him. How wonderful it would be, he thought, if Serena would be here at the Ritz to enjoy the hotel with him. The waiter had left an evening paper on the table, and Louis glanced down at the front page, and to his amazement, he saw a picture of himself on the lake, in the public garden, and the Swan boat, and a big headline said, "Boston goes wild over the Trumpet of the Swan." Wow. Louis read the article to the end and then tore it out of the paper. Sam Beaver ought to know about this, he thought. From the sitting desk, he wrote a letter. Louis took the pen, a sheet of paper, and this is what he wrote. "Dear Sam, I'm spending the night at the Ritz in fashionable surroundings. You were right about Boston. It is very pleasant. I was able to find work as soon as I arrived. I am associated with the Swan boat with a salary of $100 a week. You must You may be interested in the enclosed clipping from today's paper. If all goes well, I'll soon have enough money to pay my father's debt to the music store, and then I will own the trumpet free and clear, and still hope that by blowing it passionately, I will be able to make a favorable impression on the one woman that I love. Then everybody will be happy. My father's honor will be restored, the music shop in Billings will be repaid, and I can take a wife. I hope you are well. I miss you. A hotel room, even though it has every convenience, can be a very, very lonely place. Your friend, Louis. Louis addressed an envelope to Sam, folded the letter, fitted the newspaper clipping in it, and found a 6-cent stamp in his money bag. He sealed the envelope, pasted the stamp on, and dropped the letter in a mail chute outside the door of his room. Now I'll go to sleep, he thought. He went into the bathroom, used the toilet, then drew a full tub of cold water in the bathtub. He couldn't get Serena out of his mind. How wonderful it would be if only she was here. Before settling down for the night, he picked up his trumpet and played the song he had composed for her when he was in Ontario. He tried to play it softly, but in a moment, the telephone rang. Louis lifted the receiver and put it to his ear. I'm sorry, sir, said the voice, but I'll have to ask you not to play music with your trumpet. The Ritz does not allow the guests to play brass instruments in the bedrooms. Louis hung up the phone, put his instrument away. Then he turned out the lights, climbed into the tub, curved his long neck around to the right, rested his head on his back, tucked his bill under his wing, and lay there floating on the water, his head cradled softly in his feathers. Soon he was asleep, dreaming of little lakes in the north in the springtime, dreaming of Serena, his true love. And that'll be the end of that chapter. I hope you enjoyed his little stay at the Ritz, and the book is only going to get better and better. So, enjoy. Love you. Bye.